In 1999, the United States Supreme Court ruled in a case called Olmstead versus LC that people with disabilities have the right to receive state-funded supports and services in the community rather than institutions when the following three conditions exist. One, the person's treatment professionals determine that community supports are appropriate. Two, the person does not object to living in the community. And three, the provision of services in the community would be a reasonable accommodation. The basis for this decision was the Americans with Disabilities Act. Many people believe that the Olmstead decision is the most important civil rights decision for people with disabilities in our country's history. Yet, most people have no knowledge of this ruling. We'll try to rectify that on today's episode of A Public Health Journal as we discuss the Olmstead decision and what Minnesota is doing to meet the requirements of Olmstead. Please stay tuned.
Welcome to A Public Health Journal, a program that explores public health issues facing our society today and tomorrow. The host of the show is Dr. Ed Ehlinger, Commissioner of Health for the state of Minnesota. A Public Health Journal is sponsored by the Minnesota Department of Health and the Hennepin County Human Services and Public Health Department, all working together towards the goal of healthy people living in healthy communities.
Welcome to A Public Health Journal. Today we're going to talk about the U.S. Supreme Court's Olmstead decision, a decision related to helping people with disabilities live within the least restrictive environment possible. This decision has had major ramifications for how services are delivered in states throughout the country. We'll be looking specifically at what's being done in Minnesota in response to the Olmstead decision. Joining us in this discussion is Darlene Zangara, Executive Director of Minnesota's Olmstead Implementation Office. She is charged with implementing the Minnesota Olmstead Plan and improving the way Minnesota provides services and supports to people with disabilities. Darlene, welcome to our program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today.
And I also have to admit that we do have a sign language interpreter, Dee Ramnarayan, who is here, so people in the audience will understand what's going on. So welcome to both of you. But Darlene, let's start talking first of all, what is the Olmstead decision? And it's not Olmstead County, it's something else. So explain a little bit about Olmstead, what it is.
Sure. For me to explain what Olmstead, maybe I should give you a little bit of the history related to the Olmstead decision. It's actually two women who lived in the state of Georgia, and they both had different types of disabilities where they were institutionalized. They were there for a while until a point where their team had said, you know, you don't no longer need to be here, go out to the community. And as a result, they were not able to receive the services to help them integrate back into the community, transportation services, housing, support services. So they end up staying in the institution for a number of years, and they decided to sue. And the lawsuit at that time was Olmstead versus LC. The woman's name was Lois Curtis and Elaine Wilson. And the U.S. Supreme Court had found that it was unlawful to segregate people with disabilities in institutions. They should have every opportunity to integrate back into the community with the supports they need to be successful. And that resulted the name, the Olmstead decision. It's really an integration mandate to allow individuals with disabilities to be able to live in their communities with the supports they need to be successful.
How is the Olmstead decision different than the American with Disabilities Act that I think most people recognize and understand? Oh yeah, that's, you know, we changing things so people have access to curb cuts and elevators and open doors and transportation. How is this different than that?
Americans with Disabilities Act was passed in 1990, talks about that it's unlawful to discriminate people based on their disabilities. Olmstead talks about how we provide services. It's the focal point is allowing them having options, opportunity, and choices, and making them successful in their community. So it really focused on the how. What are the services? How are the services designed to fully maximize their potential in the community, work, home?
And why don't people know about it? And I have to admit that I did not know about the Olmstead decision until just a few years ago, and I worked in the healthcare field. We knew about the American with Disabilities Act and providing access to services, but didn't know about the Olmstead. Why hasn't this gotten more traction?
Well, it was the decision was based in 1999. So it's fairly new, fairly young. As you look at an important piece of legislation, changes occur across the country, not at a rapid pace, but we have President Obama and other individuals very involved in creating more passage to create and draw more attention to the Olmstead decision and creating opportunities. Today, we are seeing a lot of that impact, more attention. For example, the Work Innovation Opportunities Act, the WIOA, has a direct impact where it allows looking at how do we provide more options and opportunities for people with disabilities in the employment area. We're also looking at other legislations that are happening today, policies that will have a direct impact. So we're hearing more and more about it today than we did before. Perhaps people are speaking out more about the desire to live independently, desire to live where they want to live near their families, friends perhaps, the desire to work in a competitive employment area, having accessible transportation. All of that is becoming more and more of a focus. And I think that's where people are asking, so how do we take advantage of those opportunities and maximize those opportunities? Well, Olmstead can help that and pave the way for that.
Right. Well, I want to talk about those opportunities, but first we need to take another little break.
Okay.
We'll be back right after this message.
Did you know kids who play outdoors have healthier lungs?
Totally.
Did you know that boys that play with dolls make better husbands?
My son has lots of dolls. But did you know terry cloth diapers breathe better?
I did.
It's totally true.
Oh, yeah.
Did you guys know statistically friendly kids have more friends?
Yeah.
That's obvious.
Did you know most people think they're using the right car seat for their kid, but they're not?
Parents who really know it all know for sure that their child is in the right seat. Visit safercar.gov/the right seat to make sure your child is protected.
Welcome back. We're talking about the Minnesota Olmstead Plan, trying to integrate services and getting people with disabilities into the community. And we're talking with Darlene Zangara, Executive Director of the Minnesota Olmstead Implementation Office. Darlene, what implications does the Olmstead decision have for people with disabilities? What can they expect from this?
What people with disabilities can expect? They can expect that the changes that are being made with the various state agencies to look at a person-centered plan, looking at what is it do I want to be successful. Each individual is so different in terms of their abilities, desires, dreams, and the key is to look at what is it that they want to experience like any other individuals without disabilities. So an example of that with our Olmstead plan for the state of Minnesota, we have established various goals in 13 different areas that will have a direct impact. We're looking at employment options and opportunities. We're looking at housing, transportation, transition support services, health services, many other areas as well. And with that plan that's being implemented, we are also engaging the voice of the people with disabilities as well, and looking at how do we expand and grow opportunities, options, and choice for these individuals.
So how does the Olmstead Plan, how was it developed in Minnesota, and who is working on implementing this?
It's a great question. We have a sub-cabinet, and it's made up of 10 different individuals. 8 of them are from the state agencies, primarily commissioners like yourself. And we also have 2 ex officio members. One is from the Ombudsman's Office, Mental Health and Developmental Disabilities, and the other one is the Executive Director from the Governor Appointed Council on Developmental Disabilities as well. And the other 8 state agencies, I'm going to try to list them. We have the Department of Health, Department of Education, Transportation. We have the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency. We have the Department of Corrections, Department of Human Rights.
Human Services.
And Human Services, right. They're a key player in our efforts. In 2013, 2015, Governor Dayton had issued executive orders to establish a sub-cabinet to oversee this Olmstead plan and to assure accountability of this plan being followed through. But also, this sub-cabinet was also charged with creating this comprehensive Olmstead plan. It's very unique in the country, actually. I think we're probably the only state that's really looking at a very comprehensive plan.
Now, I know the courts have been involved in the Olmstead plan. How did that come about?
Okay, the Olmstead plan is a result of a settlement agreement. There was a lawsuit, and the settlement occurred in 2011, and the outcome of that settlement is to create a comprehensive Olmstead plan that would look at how do we provide services and how can we enhance the way we do that.
So what kind of progress has been made since the passage in 1999? What things have we seen differently in various states, particularly in Minnesota?
Okay, well, specifically Minnesota, I'm going to maybe address the Olmstead plan specifically. September 29th, we will be celebrating our 1-year anniversary that the court has approved our plan. We had to go through a lengthy process of getting our plan approved by the judge. One of the things that was critical in our process was making sure our goals were precise, measurable, timely, and realistic. And that process took a lot of effort from all of the state agencies working together and looking at what is it that we need to do and what changes we need to make a greater impact. So we have made tremendous progress, and we invite the audience and people to take a look at our plan. They have an opportunity to provide us regular input to make changes, expansions to the plan. So it's an exciting document because it shows that the state is very committed to creating a state where individuals with disabilities will have the opportunity to live, enjoy life, work, be part of the community, just like any other individuals without a disability. So there we've made a great deal of progress. On a national level, we're seeing more and more information being put out about how do we become more inclusive as a country for people with disabilities. There's many, many new platforms out there talking about creating more inclusive communities for people with disabilities. We have a long way to go, but we do see the changes that are happening.
And how has the disability community been engaged? Do they have an active role in helping to develop the plan and monitoring the plan and holding people accountable for the results?
Yes. Right now, what we have a system set in place where anytime that we start to look at developing a new goal, a new work plan strategy, we immediately think and incorporate a process where we will engage the communities to provide us with public input. It could be through our listening sessions, it could be through email, phone, but we also have many small work groups as well. We're in the process of creating a work group that will invite all of the individuals with disabilities to really help us become more engaged. Another really exciting part that our office is taking on is the quality of life survey. And we had just completed the process of selecting a vendor to help us with the survey administration. What this survey will tell us, the first year we'll be collecting a baseline data, and then the second year we will go back and resurvey the 500 individuals, for example, to really determine whether or not we are better off today than we were yesterday. So we really committed and serious in looking at measuring and evaluating and going back and making sure that the goals that we have set in place, the services that we have provided, are actually aligned with the Olmstead decisions philosophy.
All right. I want to talk about some of the specific activities in some of the areas, but first we need to take a little break.
Okay.
We'll be back right after this message.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for information on how to provide even better care for the person who wants to care of you.
Welcome back. We're talking with Darlene Zangara, who is the Executive Director of the Minnesota Implementation Plan, talking about including people with disabilities in the community in the most effective way and respectful way possible. Darlene, there's a whole variety of areas you listed, and I want to take some examples, like housing. How do we, there's such a huge support for people getting back into the community from various institutions, and how is that being worked on? What things are changing in the housing field to make sure that we can integrate people back into the community?
To look at the specific activities that we're doing, there are numerous activities. That's one, the exciting part of this Olmstead plan, I had mentioned earlier, is a comprehensive plan. And to address the housing, you really can't address housing without addressing transportation, without addressing employment, and so forth. So we have really gone a long ways in looking at how do we collaborate and look at the different strategies that we put on the table will have a direct impact on another strategy. Mm-hmm. And to answer your question, in housing, one example we're looking at is we need to expand more affordable homes, more opportunities to choose where they want to go, but also we're looking at services. There are many individuals that will need additional support and services that will allow them to be successful. So looking at that is making sure, well, do we have the options of housing itself, and do we have the services in place as well? So you'll see in our plan we have strategies that will align each other to make sure that it supports one another and becomes successful. I don't know if that answers the question.
So that raises the question. So
Okay.
have additional housing that is more accessible, which means you need more services in the community. You need different kinds of transportation to get people to where they are. How is it, this is going to increase, it has to be paid for. That must be one of the big challenges. How do we address the costs that this will encumber?
Mm-hmm. I think that is a tremendous challenge, and that has been a topic of many, many conversations. And with any change, I think we're going to experience some bumps in the roads, and hopefully that people are becoming used to the idea that it's okay to change and shift gears and create more opportunities in this area. We are trying to decrease the opportunities for people to go to institutions. A lot of times when there are gaps in services or funding, they automatically go back to the institution mindset. We need to get away from that and to look at how do we take resources here and apply it to another area. there's a lot of creativity that's involved here, and really looking at expanding opportunities, but definitely encouraging people to think differently about how they structure their business. A good example would be we have wonderful housing services where they provide group homes, for example, and looking at how do we maximize their strengths in that area, but become more integrated into the community. So it's a matter of looking at how do we structure the services, how do we move away from the segregated settings to more integrated settings, but also looking at paying attention to what the individual wants and being creative to meet that needs.
So, I mean, you're actually trying to change huge systems that have been embedded for a long period of time. So that's a lot of work, and funding certainly is one of this. Are there other barriers that you're coming up against of things that are really making it difficult to really integrate individuals with disabilities into the community?
There are, strengths, but there are many barriers to challenge that we're facing. One is changing the mindset of many individuals that they have about with people with disabilities, that they have great potential. Every individual is very different, and they have dreams. So changing the way we approach how we think and work with those individuals. Secondly, funding is always an issue. Sometimes you have set finite number of resources and dollars. What do we do with that? That is a scary process that we have to go through as well, making changes and shifting away where we become more inclusive for people with disabilities. Other challenges is we have many structural changes to make. Curb cuts, for example, is a huge benefit for people with disabilities, but it's also a huge benefit for any individuals, moms with a stroller, a person with a walker, or what have you. So it's trying to make that shift from thinking about what we need to do to change to accommodate people with disabilities, but becoming more of a universal design mentality. That's another challenge too. So we deal with structural things, we deal with funding, resources, we deal with people as well. And
so how are you going about educating the community in general? Because you said that is one of the barriers, and certainly we have lots of stereotypes of what works and what doesn't work. Is that part of the plan, is actually educating the general population?
Yes, it is. Community engagement, for example, is one critical area for our plan. While we try to engage with the community to give us input, but we also go out to the community and educate not only people with disabilities themselves, but providers as well about the Olmstead plan. This is what we're doing, and it's a very exciting time, and it's time for all of us to embrace this plan. And in my experience so far, it's been tremendous. Many people that I've met out in the community have been fabulous. So we do a lot of workshops, Olmstead 101 opportunities. We have a website. We have a Facebook page that we try to disseminate information. But we also are looking at other ways that they could become engaged in our state government as well. For example, we have a number of governor-appointed councils and committees, and we're looking at that as one of my charge is how do we create more opportunities to get people with disabilities to sit on this council, to have a voice in a lot of the changes. That's really critical. So I've been visiting a lot of those governor-appointed councils and committees as well. And we also have developed several training opportunities. For one wonderful example was the Leading Transportation Access group, where they basically had an intensive training on how they can advocate change within accessibility in transit.
All right. Well, we've run out of time, and we have a lot more things to cover, but thank you for the work that you're doing, and I know as member of the Olmstead Committee, we really are working diligently in all areas to try to make this possible. First, thanks for your leadership in this.
Thank you.
And I'll be back with a closing comment right after this message.
Look at you. You're at the top of your game. You're unstoppable. Nothing can throw you off track. Wait, is that your car? Uh-oh. Yeah, I saw that coming. That will throw you off track. You're looking at around 10 grand in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Let's try this again. Smart move. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Julia Lathrop was the first director of the Children's Bureau when it was established in 1912. In the Bureau's first annual report, Lathrop made a statement that is still relevant to us over 100 years later. She said, quote, "Although it was the Bureau's function to serve all children, it is a matter of common experience that the greatest service to the health and education of normal children has been gained through efforts to aid those who are disabled or suffering from physical or mental ills. Thus, all service to the handicapped children of the community also serves to aid in the laying the foundations for the best service to all children of the Commonwealth," end quote. That certainly turned out to be the case with policies put forward by the Children's Bureau in 1910, 1920, 1930. As they worked to reduce death and disabilities among children with special needs, the health of all children improved. We saw a similar phenomenon after the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Everyone has benefited from the changes made to improve accessibility for people with disabilities. I have no doubt that the changes made because of the Olmstead decision will ultimately benefit everyone in our society, not just those with disabilities. I believe it will give credence to what Paul Wellstone once said, "We all do better when we all do better." That's all for today. Thanks for watching. I hope you can join us again next time on A Public Health Journal.